Hey Candace, how's it going today?
It is going well. How's it going for you?
It's going well. You've got some exciting things happening, a new show called Candace on Daily Wire. Tell me a little bit about this. What can we expect from the show?
I think this is kind of a real dive into culture, and I think probably the first time that we've seen anything like this in a sincere effort from the right, because we've been pretty much boxed out of culture for a really long time, at least mainstream culture, and yet we've produced a lot of talent, and no one's really kind of harnessed that. So I thought to myself, the late night shows, which I think we all used to enjoy, are no longer funny, and everything that they're saying is being done really at the expense of conservatives. So what we're creating with Candace is really a late night vibe type show with interview, panel, and a hard hitting monologue from me written into the DNA of every episode.
That's amazing. So this is different from what you've done in the past. Yeah, it's a lot. It sounds a
Yeah.
lot different. It sounds like it's going to be involved. You're going to have panels, conversations. It's funny what you say about late night because I feel like, I mean, Hollywood's always had a sway towards the left, right? And media has always had a sway towards the left. But it feels like in the last few years, we've really seen a lot of that. It was always bubbling underneath the surface. It now has sort of burst out. Like we're just seeing it everywhere. And it's hard to enjoy anything because everything has become so politicized, right? And so you're kind of offering, it sounds like a little bit of a counterbalance to that.
Yeah, a bit of a counterpunch. And yeah, it has become so toxic because they're not even saying anything different. I think we can all appreciate a good joke, done at one another's expense, but this is not done. It's not meant to be lighthearted. What they're really trying to do is to say this is a decided upon narrative, and anybody that thinks outside of this narrative is not allowed into our circle. And they think they are the figurative cool kids at the lunch table. And they're not, and they haven't been for a really long time. And I think that there has been just a vacuous space left for conservatives to fill because Americans, at least half the country, is not satisfied with what they're seeing in the mainstream media. So I thought, why not me? And the Daily Wire was kind of realizing the same thing at the same time, and it sort of ended up being a perfect match.
Well, yeah, I mean, Daily Wire's diving into movies. They're diving into the areas of culture. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Fault Line, and the entire premise of the book was that Hollywood media universities, these are the areas where people learn outside of the church, obviously. And in those arenas, it's all one perspective now. And not only is it one perspective, you actually have this dynamic where you have Amazon removing books and you have major, big tech making the decisions that they're making. And I guess for me, what is remarkable watching all of this is that we talk a lot on the conservative side about how dangerous this is for conservatives. It's actually really dangerous for liberals as well, in that they're not being challenged. When you're not challenging people with another perspective, another idea, they're only seeing one narrative. They can't even know why they believe what they believe, right? And so that to me is a major problem. Now you deal with this on a day to day. I mean, this is something you've been dealing with for a long time. And as we sort of encounter people like you in the press, in media, you make a lot of headlines, but I think it's sometimes we don't know the backstory. We don't know where people have come from. And I know you've talked about that, but I would imagine a lot of people watching or listening don't know your backstory. So just to kind of back up a bit, how did you become passionate about conservative issues?
Quite accidentally. I was not politically inclined. I'm kind of ashamed to say that now because you realize, obviously, on the other side of it, that everything is about politics. But I didn't grow up in an overtly political household, and I was sort of a sleepy liberal. I say sleepy liberal. The press always lies and says Candace used to be a Democrat until she found out that the Trump could have been lucrative or whatever it was. I had actually never voted. I've never been a registered Democrat, so I will be able to die and say I was always a Republican. But a sleepy liberal in terms of just the indoctrination that comes down the pipeline in schools, the indoctrination that comes down, especially if you're a Black, right? This is race issues. Democrats have always been your savior. If you are Black, if you're a woman, you have to be a Democrat, sort of a thing. And I just sort of went along with that narrative without ever actively being involved in politics. And it really was Trump that woke me up, and in a very interesting way, because when he came down the escalator, I don't care who you were or where you were in the world, you were suddenly paying attention to politics, right? He had that impact. And I was on the side of, oh my gosh, if this man ever gets elected, the world will end. Like this, we cannot let this man get elected because he is, Donald Trump is the guy who says you're fired. He's this cultural figure. We need to be taken seriously. We can't have him in office. That was my initial response, which he knows, by the way. We're friends now. And so I really then was shocked because I expected the media to say that about him. But rather than say that about him, they said he was a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, all of these things. And I just went, whoa, wait a second. I didn't think that he should have been president, but all of these things you're calling him kind of feels like an overkill, because he's been in the media for decades. And I grew up listening to hip hop music. Everybody wanted to be like Trump, and he was just a cultural icon, right? So I then at that moment sort of started questioning my relationship with the media and saying, okay, well, it just definitely this does not seem right to me. And it seems like they're now using racism as a theme to try to distract Black Americans and to turn us into single issue voters. And when I just started questioning the narrative publicly, the amount of vitriol and hate that I got from alleged allies